What's happening, Packer fans? Happy Victory Sunday. Welcome into the Pack-A-Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. I hope your Christmas and holiday treated you well. I hope it was safe and happy and healthy. And most importantly, the Packers picked up a 24-22 win over the Cleveland Browns to move to 12-3 on the season. Matt LaFleur in the regular season is beyond ridiculous. That was not the game I was expecting. As I predicted earlier in the week on Green Bay Nation, I expected a 30-point win. I changed that slightly yesterday as I was giving my game day prediction here on the Pack-A-Day podcast on YouTube, saying they would win by 25. I felt pretty good about that when it was 24-12 Packers and Baker kept handing out interceptions like they were candy. And I honestly felt like it was going to be, Green Bay maybe getting another touchdown and then maybe another pick six or something. And it was going to be all of a sudden maybe like a 38-13 game, something like that. And I felt, or 38-12 game, I should say. And I felt pretty good about my prediction. And then Green Bay's offense just fell apart. Green Bay's defense couldn't get off the field except when Baker literally threw them the football like he was trying to. It was a bizarre game, and I think it was a little bit of an underwhelming game in the end. And it was just such a, lackluster and flat second half that I think, it leaves a poor taste in your mouth, right? Because you see 24-12 to, kick off the field goal drive at the beginning of the third quarter. And again, you're feeling pretty good about things. The defense had some ups and downs to that point, but they still had only allowed 12 points and they had, a couple big interceptions. And you're feeling, okay, they can close this out the remainder of the way. You're feeling good. Meanwhile, the Packers offense already has 24 points with 9 minutes left in the or in the third quarter, I should say. And you're feeling like, all right, they're going to at least get to 30, if not high 30s, maybe 40s in this game. And then everything just kind of fell apart a little bit. Again, defense couldn't really get off the field. Offense completely disjointed and, really couldn't get anything going on offense. And it just left a poor taste in your mouth in the second half after the first half showed signs that maybe the Packers were going to blow this team out or at least win comfortably. And instead, for the second straight week against an AFC North opponent, they had to squeak out a win with a defense getting a stop at the very end. No apologies needed. A win is a win is a win in this league, and you take what you can get. But I think overall, I think probably the Packers and the fans just felt like, wanting a little bit more in that second half, and I think understandably so. I give the Browns a lot of credit. I thought they had a really difficult path in this game. Heartbreaking loss the week before, short week, tons of guys out. Even Baker Mayfield can't travel with the team. He has to travel separately, didn't practice all week, and I know the same is for Rodgers, and I know Green Bay's missing a lot of players as well. But overall, I thought this was a really tough turnaround for the Browns. I thought that following that crushing loss last week, that this was going to be a tough game to get up for on Christmas Day. And they battled and they battled and they battled despite Baker trying to give Green Bay the game, it seemed at times. A couple of those calls were a little bit rough, I know. But despite all that, they were in it until the very end, and they had the ball with an opportunity to win, the game on the line late in the fourth quarter. I'm not sure Cleveland could have asked for much more than that going into this game, and they just couldn't get the job done in the end. And kudos to the Packers defense for, again, second straight week coming up with a big play when they absolutely had to have it. And you take what you can get. And again, I give the Browns a lot of credit for what they had to do to even get to that point in this game. Again, far from the Packers' best second half. I think that's really where things started to fall apart. I think you feel pretty good overall about the first half in this game. I know that the Rodgers record is the big talking point here, but how do we start by talking about anything other than Rasul Douglas? There are a lot of incredible stories on this season, and there's a lot of incredible stories even from this game, and all of it seems to pale in comparison to what Rasul Douglas has done. I mean, 2 interceptions in this game, the game-sealing interception for the second time this season, going back to the Cardinals game and now this game against the Browns. It's nothing short of spectacular. And Davante Adams said it, and Aaron Rodgers said it. He's a star. He is an absolute star. A month ago, against the Minnesota Vikings, he was still rotating with Kevin King. That's insane. And now he is a solidified, bona fide starter on this team to the point where when Jair comes back, Jair is the 1 and Douglas is the 2. You cannot take him off the field. You just can't. He has been that good. And we can discuss the first interception to Darnell Savage, where Douglas was probably a little handsy on that play, could have easily gotten an illegal contact call. And then secondly, on the game-winning interception, definitely a little tug at the top of the route there. Now, I will say this. Think back in your mind for a second. Think back in your mind of all the games you've watched this year. How many illegal contact penalties have there been this season? Think really hard about it. I haven't looked at the numbers, but it is something that I have personally noted as going through tape. You see receivers getting jammed 8, 10, 12 yards down the field all season long. It has not been a point of emphasis. It has not been something that they are focused on. And referees, for whatever reason this season, are giving defensive backs a bit more leeway with, contact, hand-to-hand combat, if you will, at the point of attack, up to 10, 12, even further at some point. Now, when the ball gets in the air and it's pass interference, yes, or if it's holding, a clear holding call, yes, you will see those called clearly. But illegal contact penalties, in my opinion, at least watching the Packers and every other, primetime game that I'm watching, seem to be very much down this season. And again, it's been something I've noted. So you have to play to how the game's being officiated. If officials are, going to constantly be calling illegal contact, then you got to lay off. You can't be hand checking 10 yards down the line. If they're not calling it, which they haven't been this season, that's 1,000,000% the way that you should be playing. And again, no need to apologize here. Go back to Packers Buccaneers last season, NFC Championship. What did the Buccaneers do? A lot of illegal contact down the field that just wasn't called. Arguably some pass interference at times. That's how things get late in the season. Referees don't want to get involved in those decisions more often than not. And the player who's playing a more physical brand of football is often going to win. Now, you may get a penalty from time to time. You may. But the risk reward there in those situations is huge. And it paid off huge on the Darnell Savage interception, and it paid off huge at the end. Now, I think the last one, definitely there's a tug. But one of the things you notice from receivers in this league, and you see it throughout, but you see receivers initiating that contact at the point of attack, where they're initiating contact, leaning into the corner, and then trying to separate. And I'm not saying that that's not what receivers should be doing. I'm not even saying that that's necessarily illegal. But what you're seeing is the receiver initiating the contact. And in a game right now that is very much to the benefit of the offense, more often than not, yeah, you know what? If you're going to go barreling into the corner and they're going to give you a little bit back, it is what it is. I watched that play over and over a few times, and certainly watched the replay. When you watch that in real time, now dependent upon your vantage point, but if you watch it real time on the game tape, there's nothing, you don't see anything there. And remember, referees are reffing in real time. And in real time, there's really not much there. You're watching that, the receiver goes into the corner, then the receiver separates a little bit late. Douglas makes the play. Now, in the slow motion on the back end, if the referee sees that tug on the jersey by Douglas and that gets called, yeah, very, very easily could have been called. And this is a Marvel what if moment. What if they call that? Yeah, Green Bay very well could lose that game. So it's a little bit of a risk by Douglas in that case, and how that game went. The more physical player at the point of attack, whether it was maybe some illegal contact or not, was the victor more often than not. And kudos to Rasul Douglas for playing a physical brand of football that has been his MO since the day he got to Green Bay. I can't speak to what he did in previous iterations of Rasul Douglas on other teams, but since he's gotten to Green Bay, he has been a physical football player. And I like the fact that that's the way he plays. I love his intensity. I love his physicality at the point of attack, whether it's through a tackle, whether it's through, through at the catch point, I should say. Either way, that is how he plays. And in this game, where the refs were swallowing their whistle more often than not, especially in the secondary, it benefited him to be playing that way, and it gave the Packers a victory. It really did. And again, if you're Arizona and if you're a Packer fan that's on the other side, right, if that same play happens and Adams doesn't get that call at the point of attack, or even if it's Lazard or whomever, right, we're probably complaining. We're probably complaining and saying, how do you not call that? And again, it's an imperfect game. And again, I'm not saying Green Bay should apologize for anything, but I'm saying more often than not, I like Rasul Douglas playing the brand of football that he plays. And in this game and in this season, it has paid off huge for him. And he once again is the hero for this Packers team, and particularly for this Packers defense. Got to talk about Aaron Rodgers, number 443. Don't think a ton of us had Allen Lazard pegged as the guy who would catch that touchdown. However, Certainly not like just a random name, not like it was like Tyler Davis or Amari Rodgers or something like that, just out of nowhere. Definitely a player that's deserving and a player that Aaron Rodgers has a ton of respect for. Definitely a cool moment. And I will say this, Christmas Day, Lambeau Field, all that stuff. When Aaron Rodgers throws that pass and then you see him celebrating with his teammates and the crowd just go berserk and Brett Favre comes up on the Jumbotron, that is one of those magic Lambeau moments, and one that, I got goosebumps while I was at the stadium. Can easily get goosebumps talking about it right now. It's just, that space has been a space for legends and players that have played at the highest of levels. And to be there when Rodgers sets that record and seeing how, just the entire thing went down was pretty freaking cool. And the other thing too is I know he probably should have had that maybe touchdown pass against the Ravens and broke it then. What a blessing in disguise that he got to do it in Green Bay in front of fans on Christmas Day. Just a really cool, magical Packers moment, and definitely one of the ones that I will remember being there for probably forever, but definitely for a while, to say the least. Just one of those immortal Aaron Rodgers moments. It wasn't the flashiest pass in the world. It's a quick out and some nice run after the catch by Lazard, some bad angles and tackling by the Browns. Again, no apologies needed. Number 443 for Rodgers. Well earned, well deserved, and the new Packers record holder in the record book. Speaking of which, Davante Adams and Aaron Rodgers connected for their 66th and 67th touchdowns on the day as well. Also a Packers record, surpassing Jordy Nelson. An interesting game for Davante Adams, right? Like, that whole last drive before halftime is like he catches 5 passes, and it was basically just a clinic of Rodgers to Adams and capping it off with a touchdown. Breaks the record along with Rodgers earlier in the game, and surpassing Jordy Nelson for the best duo in team history. And then at the end, a very uncharacteristic drop that gave Cleveland life. They easily could have potentially sealed it. Cleveland has the opportunity to get off the field with 3 timeouts there. Maybe Green Bay gets a field goal and the Browns still have a chance. But Green Bay would have been 3 plays away after that Adams catch from, at minimum, potentially ending it, or at minimum, putting 3 more points on the board. You just don't see that very often from Davante Adams. He is an absolute stud. You saw that throughout the game. But his drop gave a rare window, a rare drop gave a window for the Browns and an opportunity to win that game. Kudos to the Packers defense for getting off the field when they needed to, but definitely a rare drop. But overall, amazing performance by Davante, and again, another record broken, passing Jordy Nelson and Aaron Rodgers prior to that. Wanted to talk a little bit more about this defensive performance because it's a really interesting one, right? And Matt LaFleur talked a little bit about this as well in his postgame presser, where you're sort of conflicted, where you gave up all these yards, but you got the 4 picks and so on and so forth. But it's so weird. If I would tell almost any defensive coordinator going into the game, you're going to allow 22 points and you're going to get 4 picks, would you take that going into the game? I think 99.9% of the time the defensive coordinator says, yeah, we'll take that. We'll take a little over 5 points per quarter allowed, 5.25 points allowed per quarter, and 1 interception per quarter on average. We'll take that every single time. And you look at it and you say, yeah, they got the win. They got 4 picks. They came up with the pick in the moment that it mattered most. They almost had 5 picks, with Eric Stokes almost having 1. They had a bunch of sacks. You're looking at some of it and you're like, holy cow, like there's some really good stuff there. Then you look at the fact that they allowed over 400 total yards, over 200 yards rushing. Nick Chubb averaged over 9 yards per touch, or almost 9 yards per touch. No, 9.2 actually yards per touch. And you start saying, okay, had Baker not gifted us a few interceptions, that's a nightmare defensive performance. And I think you're unwise to overlook the fact that the Packers defense really struggled in this game and just say, hey, they only allowed 22 points and got 4 interceptions. That's a good performance. I think if you're just saying that, I think you're overlooking a lot of really poor play, including some awful tackling and some awful run, discipline, I guess I should say. Poor gap assignments, not gap sound, not setting the edge, so on and so forth. I think you'd be wrong in just sort of overlooking that. On the flip side, I think you'd be wrong in overlooking it the other way and just saying listen, they were terrible on defense. They allowed 400 yards, and if it weren't for Baker, they would have won that, whatever. Like, they got 4 picks, and they put themselves in position to get those 4 picks. And that's a big deal. And when you win the turnover battle 4-0, you're going to win that game almost every single time. So some good, some bad, some ugly from this Packers defense. I think they'll go back and review. I did note, it seemed, I'm really going to look at this on the All-22 and try to track it a little bit more. But it seemed like the Packers defense was gashed a little bit more when Kenny Clark was out. I'm going to take a look at that again in greater detail, so don't quote me on that. But as I watched through the second time, it sort of seemed to be the case. But overall, just not the defensive performance, especially in the front 7, that you would have come to expect. I think in the secondary, you feel pretty good about the overall play from the secondary. A couple completions you'd like to have back. But overall, pretty darn good day with the 4 picks. You got some pass rush, but overall, I think it was the run defense and, just missed opportunities up front that really are sort of haunting the Packers in this game. A little bit of feel like they're maybe trending in the wrong direction, but I do expect them to bounce back, and I do expect them to be able to play better moving forward. Speaking of, again, that offense in the second half, we talked already about the offense, or just the team in general struggling in the second half, but the offense, this is how their second half went. 11 plays, 76 yards, and a field goal to start off. So not terrible, right? Almost 7 yards of play and a field goal. You feel okay about that. Disappointed that you stalled out and couldn't get a touchdown, but 11 plays, 76 yards, field goal when you already had the lead at half. You feel pretty good about that. But then 3 plays, -1 yard punt, 3 plays, 7 yards punt, 5 plays, 17 yards punt, 3 plays, 13 yards, end of game, winning it on that hard count where they get the false start at the end. So again, some good, bad, and ugly for the offense in this game as well. Oddly enough, it was the special teams that had, I think, the most consistent performance first to second half in this game. And I'm going to go on a limb. I think they outperformed the Browns special teams. So, hey, in a 2-point game, that is not nothing. And based on how Green Bay special teams has played as of late, that is definitely noteworthy. So kudos to the special teams. I know you didn't do anything great. We will take the game that you put on tape on Saturday, every time right now. And I think overall they had the most consistent game of the 3 units. So just a bizarre game in that regards. Again, offense great in the first half, struggle in the second half. Defense has nine real drives, right? 4 scoring drives, 4 interceptions, 1 punt, which should have also been intercepted on that drive had it not been for the Eric Stokes drop. So this could have easily been 9 drives with 2 touchdowns, 2 field goals, and 3 touchdowns, a field goal, and 5 interceptions could have been the drives. Like, just crazy, the volatility of the defense in this game. In total, the offense in the second half had 25 plays for 112 yards, 3 points in the second half, and simply not good enough. I have to talk a little bit about Baker Mayfield because I'll just be transparent. I've been a Baker Mayfield believer. That is a rough game for Baker, and I still think that he's playing through some injury, and he didn't have practice for the last couple of weeks, which is tough. And I know Aaron is going through that, but not everyone is Aaron Rodgers. And I think, he doesn't even get to travel with the team, and now he's coming in and, you can tell he's a little bit rusty, right? But you can't throw what should have been 5 interceptions, 4 just back-breaking interceptions. It felt like Baker was going to give Cleveland an opportunity to win this game, which you could maybe argue he did, but in actuality, it felt like Baker was the reason Cleveland lost this game. Without some of those picks, Cleveland probably wins, and it's a tough look for him, right? Again, certainly some penalties that maybe could have been called that maybe bring a couple of those back. You can maybe chalk up the second one to a little bit of rust, but you just got to be better in that game. It was a really tough game, and had it not been for Baker Mayfield's rust and inconsistencies, Cleveland quite possibly, if not probably, wins that football game. Give credit to the Browns running game, though. I thought they should have gone to it far, earlier, more often, and they didn't. It didn't get really going until late in the game when they almost started to lose trust in Baker, it seemed. But Nick Chubb, 20. So just to give you a backstory here, the Packers hadn't allowed a 100-yard rusher all year. They've given up 100-yard games to other teams, but not a 100-yard rusher individually. Chubb in this game, it wasn't much over 100, but overall had 20 touches for 184 yards and a touchdown with a 9.2 yard average per touch. Like, amazing football player, but just an incredible game for him. More on that in just a second. But the Browns overall on the ground, 25 carries, 219 yards, and 8.8 yards per carry. horrible run defense, horrible run fits, horrible gap integrity, horrible, setting the edge, horrible tackling all the way around. And it's going to have to be something that Green Bay gets much better at. Going back to Nick Chubb for just one moment, one of my main concerns coming off these last two games is you had to know against Baltimore, make sure that Mark Andrews is locked down, keep Tyler Huntley in the pocket. You do those two things, you feel pretty good about the defense's chances. They couldn't control Andrews, they couldn't control Huntley. In this game, what do you want to do? Control Nick Chubb, make Baker Mayfield beat you. And Baker Mayfield could not beat Green Bay, and his propensity to throw picks gave Green Bay the game, but you weren't stopping Nick Chubb at all. And shame on the Browns for not running him more often earlier in the game, but you had to know that he was going to be a focal point. You cannot let him have 184 yards on 20 touches with a 9.2 yards per touch. Green Bay's game planning and execution has to be better, especially against the likely culprits. And if you're not going to do that, if you're going to allow their best players to have tons of success, you are going to continue to struggle on defense. Couple quick ones here. Kudos to Rashan Gary for his couple sacks. I thought he bounced back really nicely from what I thought was a tough game against the Ravens, letting Tyler Huntley out of his passing lanes or his rush lanes a couple times. Instead, he gets 2 sacks in this one. I thought he was a big-time impact performer. Rodgers' toe seems to be a little bit aggravated after Royce Newman steps on it, so we'll continue to monitor that. But overall, Rodgers finished with a pretty solid game overall and still seems to be able to navigate that injured toe just fine. Was another slow start for Green Bay, down 6-0 early. They have to get better at that. By the end of the first quarter, I think they were still leading, so not catastrophic, but you just would love to see the defense go out and get a stop on those opening drives, or at least in those first quarters, so Green Bay's not off to a deficit early in the game, or maybe just start receiving the football when you have the choice. I don't know, but either way, they got to figure out something there. Again, kudos to the special teams for basically outplaying the Browns special teams, or at least coming close and playing a neutral game. Again, we will absolutely take that at this point. Some quick injury notes: Shamar Jean-Charles as well as Kevin King, both on the COVID IR list prior to the game and were unable to play. So they will be out for the foreseeable future. We'll see when they can get back. Yash Nyman went out but did return at the end of the game. Tyler Lancaster went out but did return at the end of the game. Aaron Jones also pulled himself out towards the end of the game. However, it looked like he never even went into the tent, and he did have his helmet at the end. He didn't go back in. It was Dylan who finished it out, but might be one to monitor, but it didn't look like he was in any real concern on the sideline at all. That's going to do it for me today. Thank you so much for joining me. Enjoy your victory Sunday, I'll be right back here tomorrow with an all-new episode, but until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.